Things are a little upside down right now. While America has invented many great things, balkanization is an import. So is relativism, elitism, secularism, and 100 other isms, all resulting in confusion, division, and chaos. But that's the point, right? One day in the not too distant future, this moment too shall fall into the deep well of history. Maybe then tradition will have found its way back into favor. Maybe then this moment of emptiness will take its place on the heaping pile of dark social experiments. Maybe then peace and prosperity will return. As with all such stories, there will be survivors, those who championed truth, beauty, and goodness, those who held firmly to self-agency in a world of shiny, bright objects. The world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort, wrote Pope Benedict XVI. You were made for greatness. I had the fortune of attending Pope Benedict's funeral a couple months ago. There was no greater defender of Catholic tradition. Pope Benedict fought to restore the sacred liturgy to the heart of the Church with two simple words: God first. This is a simple but profound prioritization that says it all, for the liturgy, for the Church, for every individual. Following the God first principle, there has been one exception to the steady decline in mass attendance across America. Traditional Catholic parishes run by the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, or FSSP, a group dedicated to the traditional Latin form of the Catholic liturgy. The first of these parishes was begun in Southern California, of all places, what might be known as the belly of the secular beast. A large part of this liturgy is Gregorian chant. Chant, in stark contrast to the music at many modern masses, is empowered by traditional liturgical form, one energetically encouraged by Pope Benedict as a path to peace and prosperity, and one most feared by authoritarian regimes. God first seems a bit of a threat. I wonder why. Today's guests, we are honored to have not one but four. Today's guests know a lot about courage and the power of tradition. Floriani is a group of four men dedicated to serving the Church and saving the culture through the beauty of sacred music. Thomas Quackenbush, Joe Daly, Graham Crawly, Georgio Navarini have the most amazing story of courage and faith. So let's dig right in. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thomas, get us started. How did you four meet, and where did you get the idea to form a sacred music group?
It's a great question. We all went to the same college, Thomas Aquinas College, which is a small Catholic liberal arts school in Southern California, as you mentioned, of all places, the belly of the beast. But there's something really special that happens down there in Ventura County. It's a very small school, about 400 students. And the four of us all attended that school at different times, overlapping. Georgio was the linchpin who was there. He was there at the end of my tenure and the beginning of Joe and Graham's tenure. And during our time there, Georgio and I actually began singing barbershop together. And so it was a wonderful experience, singing tight four-part harmonies. But pretty quickly, we started branching out into sacred music. And there's a rich liturgical life on the campus. And after I left, the sacred music aspect of this men's choir took over completely. And it grew to a schola of almost 20 young men who sang for liturgies on campus, who sang for liturgies around the county and even around the country. But we were still full-time students at the time. And so there was an inability to provide what people were yearning for. So wherever the schola went, people said, this is incredible. And many of them hadn't even heard it before. This was a type of music that, in a sense, had been lost over the last 50 years. But the schola was unable to stick around or provide ongoing support because we were full-time students. So fast forward 4, 5, 6, 7 years, this dream of being able to give our lives to this work had ebbed and flowed. And then in the fall of 2020, the four of us got on the phone and had all separately been experiencing this call put on our hearts by the Holy Spirit to revisit the question. And we discovered that we were all on the same page. And within a matter of weeks, we had given notice at our current jobs. We lived in 4 different places in the country. And about 6 months later, we moved to Phoenix, Arizona to begin a full-time apostolate of revitalizing sacred music, reintroducing people to the beauty of Gregorian chant in particular, as you mentioned, the liturgical musical language of the church, but also sacred polyphony and the whole treasury of sacred music, which the church taught in the Second Vatican Council is a treasure of inestimable value, greater than that of any other art, which is a kind of mind-blowing statement if you think about all of the incredible works of art that have been commissioned by or dedicated to the church over the years. And yet in the 20th century, the church taught that the treasure of sacred music was of inestimable value, greater than any other art. So we sort of dove in head first, we call it a leap of faith. And the Lord's really been blessing our work and kind of confirming that this isn't our mission. This is a call that was given by the church to preserve and foster this work of art. And so for the last few years, we've been dedicating ourselves to the craft and also to spreading the good news of sacred music. And we named the name of our group is Floriani, which actually has nothing to do with flowers. It doesn't mean little flowers or anything of that sort. We're named after Saint Florian, who was an early Roman martyr and the patron saint of firefighters, many people know. He's also the patron saint of drowning victims. And our founder, Georgio, almost drowned in the Yuba River up in Northern California. And this is after having chosen Saint Florian as his confirmation saint. And as he was somewhat miraculously rescued from drowning, he had this urge to thank Saint Florian, and only realized later that Saint Florian was also the patron of drowning victims. So in the spirit of this being the restoration of reverence and beauty in the liturgy and the culture being a battle, not a cakewalk, we think it's appropriate to have as our patron a Roman soldier and martyr who was willing to die rather than capitulate to the secular forces of his time. And so we with great pride, although with maybe more explanation than another name would warrant, we chose Saint Florian as our patron.
Graham, from an insider's view, are pastors and congregations becoming more interested in traditional sacred music? I think we'd all hope for a positive answer on this, but either way, is there a growing interest, and where do you draw that impression?
I would say absolutely. As Thomas was saying, when we started the group, we would travel around Ventura County, we'd sing for masses, and we'd get these people asking us, could you just stay and keep singing this for us every weekend? And we were like, no, we have to go back to school. So fortunately, a couple of years later, we were able to make this mission happen. And it's from that sort of realization that people, whether they're familiar with it or whether it's completely new, there's a desire, a sort of inherent contemplativeness, I think, in all of us that the music draws out. There's a desire to pray, there's a desire to worship correctly in all people. And if you've never experienced a beautiful liturgy, then maybe you've never experienced that, enkindled that desire in yourself. And so through music, that's our medium. We found that wherever we go, people they're eager to learn more. They want that experience that a beautiful liturgy gives them in prayer. Just this past weekend, we sang at a new church that we were visiting, and after the communion was over and we had sung a few hymns, there was this profound silence throughout the entire church. We're getting a lot of requests within our own diocese and also dioceses around the country asking us to set up parish music programs for them, or come and work with their scholas, their new scholas that are trying to get on their feet. And people seem to be finding a new value in this, and it's something that we hope to provide for as many people as we can. And so I think it comes down to that principle of lex orandi, lex credendi, which the idea basically being that the way that you pray is the way that you believe. And as you had sort of mentioned, I think people are leaving the church, and I think that has something to do with the fact that for a long time we were trying to cater to the culture. So we watered things down, and we wanted to meet people where they're at. And I think that the numbers play out. The numbers show, and also from my own experience, I'm a revert to the faith, that way just didn't work. And so one of the things that implementing a beautiful liturgy in your parish can do is to help form people according to the reality of our beliefs, which is seen most preeminently in the liturgy. So, the Mass is the preeminent act, or the preeminent prayer of the church. And when that reflects the reality that, the body and blood of Christ is there, that's what we're celebrating, then I think people's beliefs, will kind of shift back. We have a better experience of our own faith through that experience of beauty. And from what we can see, people are desiring that, even if they don't know that that's what they're desiring.
What's your advice, Georgio, for parishes looking to reform their music programs and take what seems to be the very brave step of introducing traditional sacred music?
I think a really prior question is to ask, what is their vision for the liturgy? I think there's a question that is more directed to parishes that celebrate the new rite. And the old rite, it's pretty clear that there's a God first principle at work. And I think with most Americans, maybe even most Catholics throughout the world, in the new rite, you don't always get that sense. And so it has to be, you have to bring your parish or your priest to that understanding. And with that, you can envision what the music should be. And so obviously we're promoters of chant. The church is a Vatican II promoted chant as the primary and model music for the entire Roman Church. But I think one thing that really needs to be understood is that these two have to go hand in hand. They have to reflect each other. When you have Gregorian chants and a liturgy that's not done reverently, it can feel superimposed rather than a natural reflection of the liturgy. And so really you want a pastor who is on board with getting the liturgy up to snuff and then to have the music reflect that. And as I mentioned, in the new rite, it's a little more difficult to figure out what music really to do and how to implement it. In the old rite, you have the Liber Usualis, or which has all the chants that you need for that Sunday, including the ordinaries throughout the year. So it's a little more directed, the old rite. In the new rite, there's a lot of picking and choosing, which can get overwhelming for a music director to have so many options. What many parishes in the United States have chosen is to do the Adam Bartlett propers, and I think those are a great start to really introduce a parish to chant. They're in the vernacular, and they provide an easy introduction into chant. Now, I think even Adam would admit that his propers are not the be all and end all of the vision for music in the liturgy. He himself would probably say, like, we need the Graduale Romana. We need the authentic and ancient propers of the church really to be implemented in the parish. That's not an easy thing to do these chants they're so rich, and with that richness comes a lot of difficulty in learning. With a parish understanding that the liturgy is God first, we ought to realize that the liturgy should be the first on the parish budget as well. So a lot of times pastors want great music implemented in their parishes, but music is often the last thing on the budget, and maybe even the liturgy itself is the last thing on the budget. And in that scenario, really the priorities are backwards. The liturgy ought to be first, because the liturgy ought to reflect the very life of the parish. And so your liturgy needs to be spectacular. You need to have all the bells and whistles. You need to have the best music director you can find. So my recommendation to pastors is find the priorities in the parish budget, find a great music director, bring them in, give them the liberty to bring out the chants, to bring out all the music that they can. And don't be afraid that that's gonna break the bank for the parish. I think what we're seeing in the United States is that parishes with great liturgies and great music programs often have the best bank accounts, because there's a real love from their parishioners and investment in the church and the parish and the liturgy. And I guess maybe a final recommendation to maybe to parish music directors is to direct their efforts to the young, especially children. In my own experience, my most proud experience is teaching young children how to chant the antiphons of the Mass, to chant the ordinaries of the Mass, because they really take to it, they own it, and children are the future of the church, and so we have to start with the young. And I think that's my primary advice. Yeah, one simple way pastors can help make the music sound more sacred, just in a more immediate way, is either removing secular instrumentation entirely and just having the organ or the pipe organ to accompany the vocals, or just to go a cappella. You'd be surprised how much better a David Hawes hymn would sound just a cappella than with all the guitars and piano in the background. And so in a way, you don't lose a percentage of your parish, but you also you make the Mass sound more sacred just by making it a cappella or accompanied by the organ.
So let's say someone's interested in Floriani coming to their parish, Joe. Firstly, any geographic limitations? And secondly, what would a visit like that entail? What would a prospective parish need to know?
Certainly. Well, in terms of geographic limitations, though we are based in Phoenix, we have done parish missions and worked with high schools and middle schools as far north as Montana, as far east as Georgia, and basically everywhere in between. So in terms of geography, even though we are currently located in Phoenix, we do a lot of travel, and we are happy to visit any parishes or schools who are interested in having us come aboard and help them with their music program or their choir or whatever else, generally those two things. So what that would look like is getting in touch with us, Floriani, at using the information provided in the links below to reach out to us. If you are a priest or if you are a music director or a choir director, you can shoot us an email, say, hey, we might be interested, or we currently are interested in getting a little more comfortable, more confident with the traditional music of the church, with chant, with polyphony, with other choral works, and just dropping us a line saying, hi, let's have a conversation, because it really does start with a conversation. We don't have a one-size-fits-all policy in terms of working with different groups, because every group is unique. Every church or school is in a different place, both geographically and philosophically. And we are happy to work with anyone who's interested in talking with us.
Joe, what can parishes expect when Floriani arrives?
Excellent question. So we sing for masses. We work with choirs, both adult and children's. We run workshops. We do conducting masterclasses. We give talks on the history of sacred music. For example, we have a lecture that is a particular favorite of ours that traces the origins of Gregorian chant back to the Hebrew temple, where it first began. So we have a continuity of sacred music all the way back, more than just from the times of Christ, but for about 1,000 years in advance. So again, like we said, every church or school that we work with has its own individual desires or preferences as to the part of this project it would like to delve into, and we are there to help with any or all of it.
Excellent show, guys. Thank you for joining us. Our viewers can go to floriani.org for more about this amazing group. Beauty transcends the soul. It overcomes the dragon standing watch and modernity's sirens calling man to his demise. Sacred music is beauty that can save the culture and the nation. Thank you for joining us today. We're thankful for your time and are working behind the scenes to bring you more content that feeds the soul. When God is first, truth, beauty, and goodness follow. I'm Linda Hoffman. Look for our next exciting episode of Fear Not.
This has been a ChantWorks production. Please visit us online at chantworks.com.